Today we're talking away with a media professional who knows the MotoGP paddock like the back of her hand. Hello there, Greg Haynes with you, and I'm talking away this week from the capital of Spain. I am in Madrid. It's a beautiful sunny day outside. It's about 22 degrees Celsius, and I'm sitting in the rather lush, lovely smelling, I must say, surroundings of the lounge of Vanessa Guerra. Vanessa, hello.
Hello, Greg.
It seems interesting doing a podcast with such a good friend. How are we going to keep the balance of friend and professional?
We'll manage.
I think we will, won't we? But it's a really nice place you got here. We're on the outskirts of Madrid, aren't we? How far are we outside the city centre, approx?
About 46 kilometres away, approximately.
About 46 kilometres.
Yeah.
Very nice, though. I'm just looking up to my right. Vanessa's on the sofa to my right, and behind us we've got some purpley pink flowers. I don't know what they're actually called. What are they? It's painted onto the wall, and then they're sort of overlapped on frames, and they continue out of the frame across the wall itself. And I do know you've done all that yourself, haven't you?
Yes, I got a little creative. It took me about 2 hours to set it up on the floor to, get the visual sort of idea and set up. And then we did the sort of installation, if we want to, be sophisticated.
And what's the nice smell in here? Might move in myself.
I have a few candles around the place.
It's really nice. It's very...
scented candles is the secret.
Very relaxing. Well, thanks for inviting us in. Now, I said media professional at the beginning, and you sort of looked at me and laughed. But it's true, isn't it? Because you've done pretty much everything you can do, apart from actually being a rider itself.
Yeah. And I have ridden not... road bikes, but motocross bikes for filming purposes.
Interrupt when I miss something.
Yep.
A team manager?
Yes.
Have I not missed something already?
Yes, you have. I started off being a team coordinator. So I've managed the travel arrangements for a team, car rentals, flights, hotel reservations. I even bought the food for the riders and made sure that they have everything they needed for them and for the team members, of course. I was a press officer also and team manager. You were
a press officer when I met you, of course, with Forward Racing in MotoGP.
Yes.
And then Repsol Honda.
Poached me, yes, from Forward Racing.
And that was 2014, wasn't it?
That was 2014, yeah.
So that was my single season of MotoGP commentary. I've just got to ask, how much of a relationship did you and Marc Marquez actually have? Because there were signs all over the grandstand in Malaysia with the fangirls. It's almost as though you were married, but you weren't, were you?
No, I think they got a bit overly excited, and then maybe people thought there was something going on, because obviously as a press officer, you have to be by your riders for all the media commitments, making sure that the journalists are not being cheeky and asking, complicated questions, and just being there for backup and just making sure that they keep on track in terms of the media schedule. Because if they go over the time limit, then you delay not just your rider's schedule, but every other MotoGP riders. So you really have to be there. So of course, I've been taking pictures next to Marc very often during that season, but Marc and I are just good friends.
So I don't want this to get too much like Hello Magazine, but it could not be asked. Do you know, I had girls waiting for me in the hotel in Kuala Lumpur airport. It was ridiculous. But that's what happens, isn't it, when you're on the TV? People feel like they know you.
Yep.
So just quickly going back, you were in World Super Sports.
Before that, I was in the Stock 600 European Championship.
So that used to run alongside World Superbikes?
Yes, correct, yeah.
And that was with your brother, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yannick, okay.
Yeah.
So anyone who was watching Moto2 back in 2010, 11?
Yeah, 2010 was the maiden season.
And that was Yannick Guerra?
Yes. Alongside Fonsi Nieto as a teammate, yeah.
Yeah, not a bad teammate to have, actually.
And Xavi Simeon, actually. Because I had 3 riders. I was managing 3 riders in the team. So I had, as permanent entries, my brother Yannick Guerra and Fonsi Nieto, and Xavi Simeon as a wild card for 8 races.
There's so many people you must know in that paddock.
Yes.
Because without sounding like you're showing off, because you're not, because I'm going to ask you, how many languages do you speak?
I speak 4.
So that's Spanish, English, Italian.
And French.
Fluently.
My mother tongue is French. Because I'm Swiss born.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. I always forget that. So was English the last one you learned?
No, I spoke French at home with my parents, even though they're Spanish, but they lived in Switzerland. So I learned Spanish and English at the same time at school. I'm actually quite mad at the fact that my dad speaks German fluently and I don't, because he has one over me.
Ah, okay, fair enough.
So
but does he have all the other languages as well?
He doesn't have Italian, and his English is okay-ish.
So
Love you, Dad.
Yeah, I can feel there's some competitiveness creeping in here.
We are very competitive.
Yeah, I just must say, it's a strange one, this, because we are good friends, aren't we?
Yes, we
are. There's no shame in admitting that.
Yep.
But we were never great friends at the time because we just didn't see much of each other in 2014. It's since then, isn't it?
But that's the thing. That's the paddock life. It's very intense. And when we're both working, there is no time because you're following the race weekend schedule. And whenever you have some free time, you're talking to people, getting information, for the next session to be able to provide that to the viewers. So you're always busy.
Okay, so after that, you've since worked with Red Bull, very popular video blog in later years. This is skipping forward now. You've worked with Eurosport.
Yes.
What haven't you done?
What haven't I done? I haven't been the rider. You know what? Till this day, I struggle when I look at the screens when they're showing the telemetry. I still struggle to read it.
Well, there's no shame in that, is there? I think I would as well.
But yeah, I will admit to that. That's one thing that I regret not being more knowledgeable.
Well, I mean, you're still friends, I guess, with people like Marc. Do you speak with Danny Pedrosa much these days?
Just happy birthday, Merry Christmas.
Okay.
We don't see each other, so...
I think you have your favourites, don't you, for natural reasons, and you get closer, to some than others. But I wouldn't say they're friends, because they're not, most of them.
This is the thing. When I was working for the teams, it's a different relationship than when you cross over to media. Because obviously, when I was a press officer at Repsol Honda with Marc Marquez and Danny Pedrosa, obviously it's a different rapport because you have breakfast, lunch and dinner with them. You travel with them. So it's not the same as when you're media. You have a closer relationship just because of that. You're basically telling them what they have to do. So you're bossing them around, so to speak. Obviously not really bossing, but...
But I guess depending on their character and who they are and their temperament, you have to treat each one a little bit differently, don't you?
Yeah, but the thing is...
Danny's a lovely guy, isn't he? But he could have his moods, I remember. And
the thing is, Danny and I are close in age. Yeah. So there was a kinship there. Just because we are that close, we got each other. And I kind of understood what he needed and how he wanted to be treated. And that was fine. I worked with Colin Edwards and we managed.
Yeah, that was forward racing, wasn't it? And a Leish as well.
Yeah.
What was Colin like to work with?
He tried to get me fired when we first started off doing preseason.
Is that in a jokey way or literally?
Literally.
Really?
Yeah. So we had a rocky start. Because
sounds like it.
This is the thing. So it was my first season as a press officer in the MotoGP class, 2012. And because I wanted to do a good job, I really set up my schedules very neatly. I organized and structured everything, and I wanted him to follow the schedule. But Colin is a very old school guy, freestyle, and he has his own way of doing things. And he's 10 years my senior. So it meant that he didn't like someone younger than him telling him what he had to do.
So you're thinking there's a kid coming in here bossing me around? Kind
of, yeah. But I have to say that by the end of that same season, in September, he said, have you renewed your contract for next season? And I said, no, not yet. He's like, well, tell me what you want and I'll make it happen for you.
Really?
Because he wanted to keep me on.
And just going back very quickly, when you said he tried to get you fired, just to complete that bit, what did he actually do?
He told the team boss he could manage without me, that he didn't need me. And the team boss said, we do need her because we need her to keep you in check. But the thing is, I had to meet him halfway. So I had to sort of loosen up and adapt a bit more to him. And he adapted a bit to me. So we find the right compromise to the point that he asked me before the end of the season, have you renewed it? And if you haven't renewed the contract, let me know what you want and I'll make it happen.
And I think you have to judge the mood, don't you? Because a lot of it depends on the day they've had on the circuit, doesn't it? Let's be honest. There might be a time when I'm doing an interview with somebody and you can tell they're not in a very good mood if they've had a bad race or whatever. And you have to ask the questions, but you might not make it quite as long as you would have done if they've won the race necessarily. And depending on who it is, obviously.
Oh, you're now crossing over to media side, not as a press officer.
I'm guessing it's the same. I was talking from an interview point of view, but I'm guessing it's the same, isn't it? You might try and get them out of their interviews of it sooner than another day if they've had a bad race, perhaps.
As a press officer, you need to make sure you're keeping to the schedule so that you don't, like I said earlier, delay everyone else's schedule because the journalist will go to the next rider.
Yeah.
So you need to keep track of that. And obviously, you want the journalists to get their job done, but as a press officer, you have a commitment also to your team and to the other MotoGP riders. If not, it affects everyone. It's a domino effect.
So what would happen one day if X decides he's had a really bad race, comes in the motorhome, slams something down on the table, says, I'm not doing the
Valentino
interviews.
Rossi used to be late all the time.
So what if they don't want to turn up? Because then you're going to have the media shouting at you, which obviously is not your fault. But what do you do in a situation like that? You must have had times when somebody's been pretty angry.
So this is the thing. At the beginning of the season, all press officers get together and you set a schedule so that we don't interfere in each other's times. So we make sure that the journalists can get to every rider. But of course, Mr. Rossi used to run, late, and he'd say, oh no, he's, debriefing with his team, he's going over data and whatnot. There was always an excuse. So he ended up being at the back of the slot towards the end, so that wouldn't happen.
I see.
So we found compromises. We found ways to work.
So the journos would stay waiting for him to come and miss slots with other people. Yeah, that's bad, isn't it, really, to be honest? It's obviously a little bit of a tactic, though,
But then also journalists, ask other fellow journalists to sort of record whatever the writers are saying at the media scrum so they can later use it.
Yeah, and I think there's good and bad with that, because I've been in situations covering tests and races remotely, which has happened, especially in the pandemic, and you really need to rely on that. However, I do feel if you've made the effort to go there, particularly as a freelance, there should be some special treatment you get. Do you not think? Give them something else.
Yes. And I also made sure as a press officer that if I wasn't able to give someone a one-on-one, that I would give it to them the next time around. So I kept track of that. I wanted to be fair.
Okay, well, there's lots coming up in the show. We'll obviously continue the chat with Vanessa, and there's a lot to get through. I should have actually put something out online, shouldn't I, to get some fan questions in, but we can do that for another episode, see what we get in there. But I'll try and sort of I'm going to try and fuse Hello Magazine with some sort of professional podcast here. We'll also have a review of what happened at the latest Grand Prix in Argentina, just to catch you up there. What have you made of the new format? Because I guess you're not following every single lap of every single practice session like you were when you were working, and I don't now with MotoGP, but I really like this new format.
I enjoy the sprint format. Yeah. I was slightly reticent because as a team member in the past, I was like, oh my God, that's going to add so much stress, and that's just going to make our lives, that much more difficult because, the media is going to want more time with the riders and it's going to add media work, load. And that's not going to be great for them because they don't really enjoy that, I have to say. But as a fan, as a viewer, as a passionate, follower, I've enjoyed it.
We've got a quick word here with Louis Suddaby, who is now in his second season of commentary with Dorna Sports. Of course, this is commentary that goes out alongside Matt Burt there around the world. So let's get the latest from Louis, who, of course, is now on his way to Texas for round 3.
Yeah, hi Greg. Good to talk to you, joining you from the United States. In terms of round 2 in Argentina, much more of an air of calm over the paddock compared to Portimao, where of course we had the first Grand Prix to the new weekend format, but also to 1 year prior in Termas Honda, when the freight of course didn't arrive until very late into the weekend on Friday, and of course we didn't get a practice Friday at all. No such problems this time, thankfully, and of course we had a full Grand Prix weekend from Friday morning. Termas Honda isn't really used as a circuit with the exception of MotoGP's annual visits, and as a result of that we do tend to find a very low grip track surface when we arrive on Friday morning. The big loser of that was unquestionably Fabio Quartararo, who really didn't appear to have the confidence or the grip at any stage in the weekend, found himself outside of the top 10 at the end of practice Friday, which was where he was throughout the day. He didn't really show the potential at any stage that he was going to change that. And a nightmare weekend for the Frenchman, although to his great credit, he did salvage a 7th place on the Sunday in the wet conditions. It looked as though the big winners were going to be Aprilia, given their performance 1 year ago, Aleix Espargaro winning his first MotoGP race. They had the pace without question in the dry, first and second at the end of practice 2 on Friday afternoon. They were really scuppered by the rain though. The big winner, of course, was Marco Bezzecchi, although a special mention has to be given to Brad Binder for his performance in the sprint on the KTM. KTM qualified towards the back of the grid. They only had Joan Mir behind them, but Brad Binder's performance in the sprint was extraordinary, to put it mildly, coming through from 15th on the grid in what is of course a very short length race. To come through and win that race, he went from 15th to 1st in less than 3 laps, which is scarcely believable, before he took the lead from Frankie Morbidelli and took an incredible victory, a win that will last long in the memory. I think we're all looking forward to the next 19 MotoGP sprints, if they're anything as good as the first 2.
Lewis, what is going on? It just seems like so many people are getting KO'd at the moment. Portimao and now Joan Mir as well. after his crash in Argentina.
Yeah, I mean, in many respects, the Argentinian Grand Prix was as much about who wasn't there than who was. Of course, Pol Espargaro, we're not expecting to see for quite some time just yet. Of course, horrible injuries he sustained in practice 2 in Portimao. He's gone through surgery on his jaw, and I don't think we're going to see him perhaps until maybe the Italian Grand Prix. There is the best part of a month's break following the French Grand Prix in May, so potentially the Italian Grand Prix in June might be a likely return date. If he doesn't return there, then we might not see him until either Kazakhstan or the first race following the summer break at Silverstone. Pol Espargaro is such a fighter, and we know he's going to try and get back as soon as possible, but that is not an insignificant injury that he's sustained. Enea Bastianini, I think we will see. Of course, he broke his shoulder in that lap 1 crash in the sprint at Portimao, colliding with the crashed Luca Marini. Marc Marquez broke his thumb. I think if the Argentinian Grand Prix had been this weekend rather than last weekend, we might well have seen him at Tomás Rio Hondo, a circuit he goes so well. Of course, nobody goes better around the circuit of the Americas than Marc Marquez, the king of COTA. Of course, we wait to see what the MotoGP Court of Appeal will be deciding regarding his double long lap penalty that was initially supposed to be served in Argentina. Of course, then it got modified to apply to his next Grand Prix appearance. Whether that sticks, of course, the MotoGP Court of Appeal will decide that. So I'd expect to see him in Austin. So too Miguel Oliveira, who had a nasty whack to the hip, of course, with that crash with Marc Marquez in the Sunday race at Portimao. Again, Miguel Oliveira might well have been able to race in Argentina had it been a fortnight on from Portimao. The back-to-back nature of the first 2 Grand Prix really did force Miguel Oliveira to sit on the sidelines. So I think we will see MotoGP much closer to full strength in the Grand Prix of the Americas. Good news for Joan Mir is that he hasn't broken his ankle. Of course, he suffered a broken ankle in a very similar accident in Austria last year. The cause of him missing the race on the Sunday in Argentina was a blow to the head and also some neck pain. So 2 weeks on, you would expect Joan Mir to return. Pol Espargaro, as mentioned, won't be returning just yet, although we already know that his place in Austin will be taken by the KTM test rider, Jonas Folger, of course, a former Tech 3 rider in MotoGP. He'll be returning to them, of course, in Gas factory racing colours at Austin next weekend.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Lewis mentioned the whole Repsol Honda debacle there, Vanessa. Of course, you've worked with Marc Marquez, you've worked with Repsol Honda. Without getting into the specifics of that particular scenario, as a press officer, whether you agree or don't agree with the team's decision, how do you separate your own opinions from those you're putting out to the media? Because that must be a little bit tricky sometimes if you don't agree with something.
You're on protection mode, 100%. Your obligation there is to put out information that the team wants to give to the media. So present your case. You're making your case to the world. So that's how I view it. As a press officer, you write a press release and you make your case for everyone to see, to get it from you, as opposed to speculating, as opposed to going to a third-party source.
How easy is it, though, to accidentally give something away? Because there must be journos you trust more than... Let's say I was there, for example, now. I'd like to think you trust me. And if you ever gave me an off-the-record bit of information... I
would be very guarded. I wouldn't.
Even with me?
As a factory press officer, my loyalty lies with the team.
Fair enough. Yeah, okay.
And I wouldn't let you know anything.
Well, you've been listening to talking. No, that's fair enough, actually.
Sorry.
Well, you don't feel bad, though, do you? I completely get it, and I agree. Yeah. And I think I do the same. But would you not feel a little bit bad? Like, oh, that's a shame, because he's a friend, or he was a friend of mine. Yes. But the thing is, it's my job. Yeah, true. And I suppose the risk... I mean, unless you want to pay for my rent and then I can tell you everything and get fired. Yeah. It's, no, it's up to you. Also, jokes aside, I guess it's not even just about... It's just loyalty, isn't it, in general? There's certain things you just don't give away, aren't there? Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about Marc Marquez, because he is, in my opinion... the great, no, honestly, he's the greatest motorcycle racer. I have worked with more riders than Marc. I know, but he's a legend, isn't he? Let's be honest. And he's the greatest motorcycle racer we have ever seen. And when you were doing, we're not going to go completely in chronological order here, because when you were doing the Inside Pass vlog, the video series for Red Bull, which you did on YouTube, 2 years, was it? 2.5. 2.5, which was very popular. And I used to really like it, actually, as a way to, because I was by then working in World Superbikes, use it not just for entertainment reasons, because it was lighthearted and funny, but as a way to actually catch up and use it as a weekend highlights. I liked the fact they played race highlights into it too, and I thought that worked really well, actually.
We did. We included it. We scripted it that way. So we would have a bit of everything. We'd have a bit of fun with the riders. We humanize them as people so that anyone watching would enjoy it. You didn't have to be necessarily super knowledgeable. But even the people that were super fans would actually also enjoy the interaction and the personality. It was just there to highlight, to humanize them.
Marc, of course, has a particularly infectious laugh, which we so often heard with you. You don't know about this on the show.
Hey, I don't want to know your secrets.
Hello and welcome back to Inside Pass. You join me here in Saxony, Germany for the 9th round of the MotoGP World Championship. There's a real party atmosphere surrounding the German MotoGP weekend as we celebrate hitting the halfway mark of the season. Let's go join the riders. So, Stefan, where are we headed? If you can pronounce it in German.
I think we're going to Red Bull Renncircus.
So a lot of 93 t-shirts, Marc.
I'm checking if all the designs are there, because if not, I attack.
And it's a home Grand Prix for you.
Yes.
Are you feeling all the support?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
You know the words?
That everything.
What?
You know the words?
What?
That is his home GP, everybody expect a lot. But HRC is every run have a different bike.
Yes.
No.
If he say, I am not allowed to tell you, but I have to test all the things for him. You know? On Sunday, they take all the good parts to give him. And
It's amazing how many broadcasters don't like listening back. You should have seen her face when she was listening. You didn't know that was coming, did you? But that's the sort of thing. I mean, the fact they're giving away quite confidential information in a way.
This is the thing, right? Obviously, with Marc specifically, I've been his press officer, so obviously, there's that. And I think when you are filming a vlog with a GoPro is less intimidating than a big old camera. Which puts everyone at ease right away. And when you're having a very casual conversation in terms of the format of a vlog, of course, people tend to open up a bit more, feel more relaxed. And obviously, when there's a trust established, between you and the athletes, I think it's way much easier for them to relax and give away things.
Stefan Brada was the other rider there, of course, for those of you who didn't recognise the voice. He's another good guy, isn't he? I remember Stefan, really. he had his moments. I remember when he came to World Superbike, I'm not sure he really wanted to be there, but just such a professional guy and always had a smile on his face, to be fair. Absolutely.
And he had, at the time of this recording of the vlog, a very tough job, as Marc described perfectly.
Yeah, that was 2019, by the way, for anyone who was wondering.
And we had a conversation later that day about Marc being the oldest rider on the podium lately, and he did not enjoy that bit.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Really? Funny. One bit I particularly enjoyed with Marc, and I can't play in every single blog you've done over the last few years, obviously, but do you remember the red hot chili pepper in Japan?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it?
You have been on the podium 7 times here in Japan.
True.
No, you've been on the podium 8 times.
No,
Yes. You sure about that, Marc?
These two. Don't worry, we're strong. I will ask you a nice beer tomorrow when I will burn my ass. You will see.
He had the infectious laugh. I remember we used to do the sideways glance videos on MotoGP. And it's just a laugh. You can't not laugh.
To give a bit of context, he had 2 questions, and he had basically been wrong on both of them, but the first time around, his press officer, Hector Martin, took the hot chili, and seeing his reaction, he's like, oh God, I better not get the second question wrong, but he did, which is a question you heard.
Yes.
And he's like, okay, I can't do this again to Hector because, then tomorrow he's not going to be able to leave the toilet.
Because was that the Thursday, I'm guessing?
That's the Thursday, yeah.
So did you primarily record those feature bits on the Thursdays?
Yes, because that's when the media time is allocated, yeah.
And were the ideas yours or the production team or a bit of both?
We brainstorm as a team, and whoever has the best idea, takes it, and that's the one we use.
Because there seems to be a lot of you in there. That's my feeling. I never actually asked you this before.
So the part about fun facts, I was like, we should do fun facts that people might not know. So it's fun for the riders. There's a bit of cultural information, and it was striking a balance, doing this and doing a bit of tech talk later on in the vlog. And then race recap, as you said, it was good.
One thing I really liked as well, actually, Vanessa, and I want to try and do this more in our output on the telly this year with Eurosport, with World Superbikes in the UK, is take people away from the circuits. You know, that piece we heard at the beginning with that music there, you were in the town in Germany and you get to see the surroundings, because so often on the TV, you only see the circuit.
I've taken Tony Arbolino wakeboarding for the first time, because on that specific vlog, I was trying to prove that athletes pick up other sports quicker than the rest of, us human beings. First time.
And do they?
Oh, yeah, they do.
They do.
No surprise there. I was just testing this theory, and of course, they proved me right.
Where was the wakeboarding? Australia?
No, it was in Misano, because it was his home Grand Prix.
Of course. Okay, yeah. He's a guy who's coming on strong as well, isn't he, now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's there does seem to be, and this isn't a criticism, it's just the way things are, there are a lot of Italians and Spaniards still, aren't there, dominating things, and it feels a little bit too much, no?
But the thing is because the Italian and Spanish Federation have amazing youth programs. So there's a lot more, let's say, bikes available and championships and cups, like, the Bancaja Cup, the Aprilia Italian Cup. So the kids have more access to them than other countries. And you could project yourself riding a motorcycle or road bike in the future.
You have the climate to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Because you can't really go around Birmingham or Manchester on a scooter. Well, you could, but you look like a bit of an idiot. I've just got one more I want to play in from the Red Bull days. And this is Andrea Dovizioso. And actually, funny enough, I remember we tried this with After the Flag with Scott Redding in 20...
Oh, God, I know what's coming.
You know what's coming, don't you?
I know what's coming.
Those of you who haven't seen this, I think we'll have to describe, won't we, to everyone, in case there's anyone who's not seen it, because the video sums it up. Well, you can tell us what was happening.
So on this very specific vlog, the tech talk was... related to safety and the airbag. I'm presuming this is what you're going to be showing or to the listeners, is that we were talking about the tech talk and the technology behind the airbag system in the leather suits. And I was ballsy enough to ask both Alpine Star and Andrea Dovizioso's manager if they would be game to have, do a demonstration live. And that's what we did.
Just so you know, I am definitely going to enjoy this.
I'm a bit nervous.
So all good? All good? FP1, FP2, everything great? Briefing went okay?
Ready.
Journalists okay?
Ready.
Yeah?
Ready.
You sure?
Go.
Yeah? Does it work? So, Davi, how does it feel?
It's not the same.
It's exactly the same.
It's not the same.
So
Maybe because you crash and you lose some seconds.
Yeah.
You are complaining at the moment. You don't feel that. It's very big.
Well, thank you for joining me for this airbag challenge. Bye, guys.
The airbag challenge. It's good we told everyone what you did, because you would have thought you'd been shot listening to that.
Okay, just for a bit of context, because we had to manually activate the airbag, because obviously we couldn't simulate a crash for real in safe conditions. So basically he activated mine, so he had to push a button on a computer and activated mine first. And then I was going to do his, but what I wanted to do is to have him not see it coming. So I was trying to distract him talking about nonsense and then push the button. And so I was making him wait.
He sounded really nervous, actually. So just go.
Yeah. It's just the anticipation,
Maybe it's the fact they're not in control as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think a lot of riders, for obvious reasons, are control freaks.
Yeah.
Have you had a favourite job you've done? Of all the things you've done, I mean, you've been your brother's team manager, team coordinator, as you said before. You've worked on the Red Bull thing. You've been the press officer for Forward Racing. Repsol Honda, Eurosport, which we'll come on to in a minute, a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Is there a favourite?
While I was working with my brother, it's nerve-wracking as a family member, because you need to get over the danger. And because as a family member, you can either have the effect of an e-brake, like a handbrake, or you can be a source of energy and something they can sort of like count on, like a support, something to propel them forward. And I had to get over the fact of the danger for him to be able to see that, because if a rider sees a family member suffering because, you see them risking their lives, they won't push as hard.
And there must have been times where Yannick did have injuries and had to go off to the hospital or whatever. I mean, what's that like?
he was training with Julito Simon, who's now working as a coach, I think, for Yamaha factory. And they went to do enduro. And my brother crashed on the Monday before a doubleheader in Europe. I was informed that he had crashed and broken his collarbone, and he was being taken to the hospital. So he had surgery that same day. And I remember me getting to the hospital before he went to the operating room, and his shoulder was like almost to his waist.
What?
Yeah, because the collarbone broke in 3 pieces, and the shoulder was like, not to the waist, but like to the elbow, like height. And it's shocking to see that, and then to see him come back from the operation, and him being still cold because of the anesthetics. It's a dose of reality that sort of like reminds you that yes, this is a sport. Yes, this is in a way entertainment, but at the same time, there's real people, sustaining serious injuries. I mean, collarbone is I don't want to lessen the gravity of it, but because they still need to recover, because a lot of riders come back so quick and everyone think, oh, riders are superhuman. But, they still need to recover. They're still very much human, but they find the strength because they also fear that they might lose their seat if they stay away from the racetrack for too long.
And how do you feel going into a hospital and seeing your brother in that state and trying not to just burst into tears?
I was mad. I was like, you silly person, how can you
Were those the words you used?
No, I was less appropriate. I was like, how silly were you? Why would you risk that ahead of a Grand Prix doubleheader in Europe?
The poor guy's just broken his collarbone really badly and you're there.
He made a bad call. You don't do that the Monday before of a race weekend.
I suppose you knew at that point. Well, yeah, I suppose you knew also he was relatively, So
I was a team manager, then I had to find a replacement. So he was just making my life hard as a manager.
So that was the real reason.
Well, no, I mean, as a sister, I'm like, oh, you poor little thing, I want to cuddle you and but at the same time... Did you say that
first or did you get angry first?
No, I got... At first is the shock. It's like, are you okay? Once you get the, I'm fine, I'll be fine. Then you're like, can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
You dickhead, what were you thinking?
That's interestingly the first swearing we've had on the podcast has come from Vanessa, which I wasn't expecting. It's interesting. Yeah, I always used to think you were the cute, shy girl at Forward Racing, and you're not, are you? Well,
back in the day, I was way younger.
Well, not shy anyway. Well, yeah, you were.
I was younger. Yeah.
But I always remember, the petite, quiet, shy girl. You've got a temper on you when you want to, haven't you?
Well, this is the thing, right?
I've heard you can get involved in road rage incidents.
Well, this is the thing. If you ever get to be with me in a go-kart racetrack,
I'd love to do that.
We will no longer be friends once that visor goes down.
We should go-karting together. Are you prepared to lose or?
That's a joke.
Oh, it's going to...
I've recently done endurance racing go-karts with my brother. He actually asked me to join the team and we came in second out of 17 teams.
I think I would probably need to lose a few kilos to be fair. So you would have the weight advantage, but not the age advantage, Vanessa. So, pros and cons, every cloud.
That doesn't matter.
Anyway, moving on very quickly. But yes, if we do that, by the way, we will let you all know. And
Absolutely.
If I don't beat her,
there will be video footage to back it up.
Yeah, there will. I think you probably would win, to be fair. I'm going to say that now and play it down, because then if I do win, it's just an amazing result, isn't it? When you left, the Repsol Honda thing ended, didn't it, at the end of 2014? And I remember having a chat that winter. Yep. It was a time of change, because I went from MotoGP with Dorna to World Superbike with Dorna, but totally different paddock.
Yep.
Never been there before.
That's where I started off.
You did, didn't you?
Yep.
In the Stock 6 days.
Yep.
The now defunct Super Stock 600 Championship, which of course was won by people like Toprak Razgatlioglu as well in more recent years.
Yep.
It's a nice paddock, isn't it?
It is.
Still think it's the friendly paddock. I'm not saying MotoGP is not a friendly paddock, because it is. But I just think there's less money around in the Superbike paddock. It's more like Herbie Blash from Yamaha has always said to me, it's like F1 used to be in the 60s and 70s. Because I think MotoGP is getting more and more and more like Formula One all the time. More money, which is great in its own way. It's got that exclusivity. But I do feel World Superbike is the friendlier paddock, if I can say such a thing.
Well, there were more motorhomes or campers, and there were more barbecues back in the day, and it was easygoing. They had like kiddie pools.
Yeah, they still do. They still do.
So that hasn't changed. Yeah. And you felt like you could, working for one team, you could still go into someone else's pit box and chill and say hi, or maybe ask for a spare part if it needed to, be asked for. But in MotoGP, it was very much like, if I wear the Repsol Honda uniform, I don't feel like I can just walk into Yamaha.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very much the big difference. It's not that it's not friendly. It's that you have to respect the team and also the development that goes into it, the money that is behind, everything that that they're bringing to the table in terms of the new technology or, aerodynamics, anything. You don't want to give anything away that, could potentially damage your team's chances of winning a title.
And this is why we often see riders or drivers in car racing on gardening leave, don't we? If they've left a team, they're not allowed to test with the new one often until the beginning of the next year, unless they get a dispensation.
And if they do, they're not allowed to talk about it to the media.
Yeah, that's a strange one as well, isn't it? Like they can't.
But that's because riders have two kinds of contracts. They have the rider contract as someone who's going to ride the bike, and then the other one as in terms of image rights and sponsorship. So when you stop riding for a team on Valencia or end of season race on a Sunday, your contract might be up in terms of the rider, and then the following day you'll have testing with your new team. But the promotional contract for sponsors doesn't end until December, which means they can still use your image wearing those team colors, and that needs to be respected. And that's why you'll see riders changing teams but not being able to speak to the media, doing media debriefs.
Yeah, because the way Dorna does it, of course, the test used to be on the Monday, didn't it? But I think they suddenly got
Monday
wind
or
of
Tuesday.
Yeah, but do you remember when it was a Monday and everybody would be hungover after?
Exactly, that's why they changed it.
That's why they changed it. And I think the official line was to let everyone just recuperate. Well, they were recuperating, but not in the way you would perhaps imagine. Some of those parties, by the way. I'm not a party animal. Well, you're not a party animal either, are you really?
I'm not at all, but the thing is...
Some of them were just chaos, weren't they?
Because the MotoGP season is that long, obviously, it's a time of celebration because it's coming to an end. There's been a lot of effort and work put into it, a lot of travel, and everyone is happy that, season has ended, everything went well, and you just want to enjoy that one last party before you just don't see each other for like 2-3 months.
Some fun and games still happen, don't they? Let's be honest. Some of those Moto3 riders are unbelievable.
But you know what? The Moto3 riders, the average age is quite young, and they're traveling sometimes without their parents. And I think they're like, ooh, I'm an adult, like I'm going to do things that I'm not allowed to do. Or, you know what, like when your kid's like, I want to grow up and so that I can stay up late and watch TV and drink Coca-Cola and whatnot. And they get to do that in a way. But I think that's why maybe you see them like they enjoy that freedom a bit early.
Yeah. And do you know what I also think as well, jokes aside, it's a cliche, but they are living on the edge. And I do think they know any moment could be their last. It's extremely dangerous what they're doing. And I think they live life to the full. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
I don't think, I have to disagree. I don't think they think that, because if they did, they wouldn't ride.
True. Well, yeah, I'm not saying they're thinking it's going to happen to them, but they must know in their heart of hearts it could happen to them.
At 16, that's not what they're thinking.
Really?
Yeah.
Honestly?
Yes.
But they must know the danger.
No. Because at 16, you haven't had major crashes, hopefully, and that's not what you're thinking. They start thinking that once you have a major crash that like prevents you from taking part in a Grand Prix weekend, that's when you're like, okay, hold on. I can get seriously hurt and it's going to take time to recover. Okay, I need to think it through.
Well, I think if that's the case then, and I'm sure you're right, that is dangerous, because we've seen some really, really, really bad accidents, haven't we, the last few years, Moto3 and Supersport 300 in particular. Some crazy stuff goes on. I'm pleased to say it's got a lot better. Okay, let's go back then to you, Vanessa. The move to Eurosport for 2015.
Yeah.
How did that all come about? I remember at the time you were very nervous, as I was when I started on TV.
I thought it was a joke.
Did you?
When I first got approached, and they had to approach me twice before I took it seriously. I thought it was a practical joke because I had Alexis Masbou, who was back then a Moto3 rider, and he said, because between the French-speaking community, of course, we bonded, and he called me. It was during the Qatar race weekend, because I wasn't working that weekend because I had a family problem and that required me to stay home for a bit. So I said, okay, I'm going to take a year off from MotoGP, and And yeah, he called me. He's like, hey, where are you? And I'm like, I don't see you. And I'm like, no, I'm not in the paddock. I'm not working. He's like, that's why I'm calling you, because French Eurosport is looking for a pit lane reporter, and they absolutely want a female, and they're struggling to find one. And I told them, I know a girl. She speaks really good French, but she's Spanish, but she knows the sport. People know her, and I think she would be the right fit. And yeah, but I thought it was a joke. I didn't take it seriously. And 2 days later, I had another Frenchman from the paddock contact me, say, hey, I'm at Doha Airport. I'm here with Sébastien Charpentier, who was doing the commentary with Remy Tissier for Eurosport France. And they said, can I give them your number? And I said, yeah, why not? I was like,
did you still think this was a joke?
I was like, I'm going to buy the ticket, but I'm not going to win the lottery. That was the thought process for me. And he called me. He said, listen, I'm about to board the plane. Let me call you once I land in Paris. So 8 hours later, he called me. He explained to me the project. I still thought he was mad. And after I hung up with Sébastien, I called my brother you're never going to believe what just happened, as a joke kind of a thing. And my brother was like, you're going to try, right? And until that moment, I hadn't really considered doing it for real.
Why?
Because I had imposter syndrome. I was like, I've never worked on TV. I've never been on the media side of things. And what gives me the right or the credibility to, work for French TV, not being a French person, and talk about bikes?
Yeah, but you speak fluent Spanish, and the paddock's predominantly a Spanish paddock. And also, you had been on the media side from the team point of view, so you know what the media wants, don't you?
Yes, but at the same time, you have that imposter syndrome, that voice inside of you saying, who do you think you are? So yes, I was very nervous on my first Grand Prix in Jerez. That was scary because I had no media training. They just literally gave me an overline belt with all the, bells and whistles. And they were like, off you go to pit lane. And it was a sink or swim situation. We found out pretty fast whether it was going to work or not.
Okay, so you didn't do Qatar, and you didn't do Argentina and Texas, but could you watch their coverage to get a feel for how they did it and who did what?
So they had me fly to Paris for preliminary talks, and they wanted me they wanted to show me the production side of a Grand Prix weekend from the studio, and they did. Oh, we're going to do a camera test. So I came in on a Friday. I saw how the studio worked. I saw the behind the scenes, which was amazing, by the way. And met the producers, met the main presenter and the guests that they usually have. And they said tomorrow, which was Saturday the next day, it's like, we're going to do a camera test. We're going to do a camera test on the hallway just to see how you look on camera, how you do. It's like, yeah, sure, whatever. The next day, I get to the studio, and one of the producers was like, I think you're going to need a little more makeup. I'm like, excuse me? I was like, I'm going to do a fake live. And they're like, oh, you haven't heard. And I'm like, what do you mean I haven't heard? He's like, yeah, you're no longer going to do a camera test on the hallway. You're going to go live on the studio. I was like, what?
The same day?
Yep. And so they said, can you give us like the latest news on MotoGP? Have you been following? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you explain what the arm pump syndrome is? And I was like, yeah. So I went live.
In the studio?
In the studio.
Wow, what was that like?
So while I was on the makeup chair, I, like when you have the makeup artist like sort of doing retouches and whatnot, I was like, can I have a second? I ran to the bathroom. I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, this is really happening. Oh my God, what the hell? And then I went back.
That's quite something.
And I just pretended like everything was fine. And they walked me to the studio. They mic'd me up. And when they mic'd me up, that's when I knew that it was happening. Then you see the cameras, the lights, and the studio is really different to being, out on pit lane with the bikes. Cause that's like, you're more immersed when you're in the studio. Yeah. It feels very like, I'm not going to say artificial, but it's like more calculated.
Yeah, and there's a real disconnection from the event you're covering, isn't there?
Yeah.
Because in the pit lane, you've not just got the sound, you've got the smell of the pit lane.
The atmosphere, the vibe, the energy.
You can feel the vibrations going up through your feet. And I'm not often in the pit lane, obviously, but yeah, you've not got any of that in the studio.
No.
You could more or less be sitting at home.
Yeah. So the presenter made it really easy for me. He's like, listen, I'm not going to trick you into anything. These are the questions. I followed his cues. And when we came back from commercial break, he introduced me. We chatted for about 4 or 5 minutes. Then we cut back to commercial break. And when we cut back to commercial break, a producer came in and said, you got your tickets for the next round, which is Jerez. You got the job. And I was like, okay.
Okay, wow.
So my job interview was literally live.
Crikey, that's the best way to do it in a way, isn't it? Be thrown in at the deep end. At the time, it doesn't feel like it, but looking back...
Yeah. Had I had time to think about it, I think I might have not done it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's probably why they didn't tell you.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing you cannot learn at university or anywhere else for that matter.
No.
And sometimes it does have to go wrong.
No.
There's been good moments.
Yeah.
Let's quickly talk about one of the really bad moments.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say, I think, don't you? Barcelona, 2016. I wasn't there. I remember actually being at my grandmother's house in the UK.
I'm getting goosebumps as you speak.
Are you?
Yeah.
Regular viewers will know the loss of Luis Salom, who you knew well, didn't you?
I knew him and his mom.
Maria, yeah. Seemed like a massive character.
She's a super mom.
How did you deal with that? Just tell us how did it happen in terms of the coverage, and how did you personally deal with that?
So that happened on a Friday. So you have the whole race weekend ahead of you. Obviously, on the day when it happened, I was asked to go interview people about their best memories with Luis, and I felt that was not appropriate. It was too early. We hadn't digested the news. We couldn't even believe it was happening. So I didn't feel comfortable. I spoke with the team. Everyone agreed, and we decided to be respectful. And still, we still had to, first of all, process it and grieve, because obviously when you travel with, the MotoGP circus, like we call it, or the MotoGP family, they're not characters on a movie. They're people you spend time with, and you travel, and you know their struggles, and you know their families. And yeah, it's tough. But then the next day we were opening the program with Carmelo Speletta breaking the news in the press conference from the day before that he had passed. And we had to immediately go from that to us by the truck of the Luis Salom's team. And they wanted me to open the show. And I said, if you want someone crying on camera, but I wouldn't want to do it. And so Remy Tissier and Sébastien Charpentier stepped up and said, we'll do it. We won't cry. And they ended up crying. But I remember I was right on the other side of the truck where they were filming and listening to our program. And as they were listening, we were all listening, obviously, Mr. Carmelo Speleta's words confirming the passing. Everyone got emotional. It's impossible not to get emotional. And they struggled to they cried. They ended up crying. But I remember the atmosphere was people that I didn't know. Like, I remember I was crying. I was standing on my own with my headphones, listening to our program, and I was crying. And I remember this camera crew guy from another TV saw me standing there crying. He dropped his camera. He came to me, hugged me. Just for context, he didn't know me. I didn't know him. He hugged me because I think it's only human to, when you see someone, crying or hurting, to try to help them, especially within our community, because he knew why I was like that. And he just came and hugged me. And, later on that weekend, I went and thanked him, because it was incredibly human of him to just sort of come and console me without knowing me. I appreciate that moment.
That's one thing I have to say, although they are the most tragic of moments, is one thing I love about our sport. I think bike racing in particular, because it is so dangerous, and sadly there are more bad moments than there are in cars. Everybody sticks together, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a horrible thing. I remember being at Laguna Seca in 2015, and we lost Danny Rivas and Bernat Martinez, two Spaniards coming over to race in Moto America that weekend in the same accident. Yeah. And it's a horrible, everyone goes numb, don't they?
There's very difficult and tricky things when accidents happen in terms of the media when you're covering live, because obviously there's no time to sort of like plan how to manage it. And I have to say that there was one accident with Alex De Angelis in Japan in Motegi one year. He crashed. It was a pretty bad crash. And obviously the commentators were trying to sort of set the scene and explain to the people, at home what was happening. And all of a sudden the white sheets were coming up. And the thing is, that is perceived as a really negative sign that something's going really wrong. But the protocol in Japan is that you protect the privacy of the athlete. So it doesn't necessarily mean that something extremely bad happened, but they're just protecting their privacy because maybe they're cutting the suit. Maybe, they want to, protect their family from seeing something without getting proper information first.
Yeah.
So, there's things like that you have to I remember Remy saying, oh, it looks very serious. And I said, Remy, don't forget that here in Japan, it is the protocol to protect their privacy, their intimacy. So, I don't necessarily, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's wait to hear the news. So you have to be very careful because someone's mom, sister, dad, cousin might be watching and they're far away and you're their source of information. You have to be very, very careful of the way you do it.
You really have to, it's like walking a tightrope, actually, isn't it? Because you can't say, don't worry, everybody, we've seen people crash here before and they've got away with it.
The tone has to change. You need to be mindful, respectful, but you're still entertaining. It's a very fine line.
Yeah, because you can't say, obviously, at the same time, oh my God, this looks absolutely awful. Obviously, you can't say that, can you?
No.
I think you just have to stick with the facts. I mean, we've had this in commentary and sometimes the news breaks, sadly, when you're still on air as well.
Yeah.
But genuinely, we don't know, do we? We're at the circuit. You might be in the pit lane or I'm in the commentary box or whatever. And we don't really know much more than anyone at home, do we? Until news starts coming through.
You get rumors ahead of everyone else, which is very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
Very dangerous because you're trying to get some people will privilege getting the news out first. But for me, it was always a case of I want to make sure and fact check before I say something on air.
Yeah.
I'd rather not be the first one, but I'd rather give you the right information.
Yeah, something like that for sure. Because that's not the same as somebody's gone off and it might be one of two teammates and you can have a 50% chance of getting, because if you do get it wrong, it's not the end of the world. But with something like that, you don't want to get it wrong. Those guys, though, what were they like to work with? Sebastian Charpentier, Remy Tissier, generally speaking. Fun. I bet there were some good moments.
Christian Saron, let's not forget Christian Saron.
who I have to say, I don't really know Christian, but he's known as a bit of a joker. I know that much.
Yeah, he's honestly he's such a kind soul and he is a bit of a joker. I'll tell you one thing. When you travel with him by plane, he is on pole position to get off that plane. Let me tell you, because he's rushing to the car rental to be the first one to get the car keys.
Well, actually, yeah, with MotoGP, because the whole plane is full of, and everyone's going to either the Hertz desk or the Avis desk. It's savage, actually.
Yeah.
But I don't like rushing. Do you?
I don't. Yeah.
I don't like waiting. I hate queues, but
and
I don't
there's
like
a connection
rushing.
Flight. Then yes,
that's
I do.
A horrible feeling as well.
Yeah.
Have got this for you, by the way.
Hello, Vanessa. This is Remy. It was such a great adventure to work with you for Eurosport for the MotoGP. I remember especially the last overseas when we were together in Thailand, in Australia, and in Malaysia also for my birthday. I hope to see you soon in Paris.
Remy Tissier there, who of course is still working for Eurosport in World Superbikes. What happened on his birthday?
Oh, my Remy.
It must be strange, because I guess you normally speak with him in French, don't you?
Yes.
That must be a bit weird. Thank you again for doing that, Remy. Yeah, I understand he is, or was at least, friends with the director of the Sama Sama Hotel in Kuala Lumpur Airport.
Actually, he managed to get us a booking once when the agency told us it was impossible, absolutely not happening. And Remy made a call and we got the rooms. So, yes, he is friends.
Wow, that just goes to show. Why would they not want to give you the rooms? That doesn't make any sense.
I think sometimes agencies get lazy and they try to book you with hotels. They have agreements and interests.
Okay.
So that's the way it works with them.
Have you ever broadcast with a hangover?
No, because I don't drink much.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
No, you don't actually, do you, to be fair? No, I'm just saying, because some of the things I've seen over the years, sometimes I don't know how people do it. I do not know how they do it.
No, because, I mean, I don't drink much, but if I did, just think about it. I was a pit lane reporter for Eurosport, so you're down, with the bikes, with mechanics, and the amount of people down on pit lane between camera crews, photographers, mechanics, bikes. I mean, and IRTA representatives and then sometimes marshals. So there's way too many people. You need to be so aware of your surroundings. If you were working hangover, your pass should be, they should take your pass away.
Of course, completely irresponsible. And he's standing in the sunshine all day at most places. Yeah. easy is that, though, to potentially get run over? It must, because you're wearing headphones as well.
Oh, I've seen people get hit.
Have you?
I've seen people get hit. Yeah, especially guests, when they allowed guests to go to the pit wall. And I've seen guests not being mindful of what's going on. They're like so overly excited. They have like tunnel vision. Let's get to the pit wall to see the bikes go by really fast. And at the same time, there's people working. And I remember Carl Crutchlow actually ran into someone.
I'm not surprised. It can happen. In fact, I'm just going to throw a special hello in. Thank you for reminding me. To Ton Marcet, who has worked with Dorna since 1993. I don't know whether you know Ton, Vanessa. He used to work as a cameraman. Sergi Sendra, who was until recently the MotoGP World Free TV director, was a cameraman as well, an Eng cameraman back in the day. And Ton has just retired from Dorna, literally in the last few days, after 30 years. One of the really good guys.
Happy retirement.
Yes, well happy retirement, Ton. But the reason I thought of Ton, he was so good working in the office with Ton. It was brilliant, actually. What a great guy. But the reason I thought of Ton then is because the very first Grand Prix he ever went to was Jerez 1993. And a poor Japanese rider by the name of Wakai was actually killed in the pit lane because somebody ran across.
Yeah.
I think it may have been a spectator sort of situation or a guest, ran across the pit lane and he tried to avoid them and ended up banging his head on the pit wall. So, things, I guess also you need to remember which way they're coming from, because some circuits they're coming from the left and some they're coming from the right, aren't they? People will be wondering, I'm sure, they're probably screaming at me while we're having this chat. What's Vanessa doing now? What are you up to these days? Because I know you are missed by people. I mean, that Red Bull blog in particular, because they were informative, they were funny, they were lighthearted. What are you up to now?
So I'm still a freelancer. I do bits and pieces here and there. I've done things with Formula One and still a bit with MotoGP. I've done team presentations. I'm working in the family business now, but if a project comes along, I might do just one-offs. But the thing is, I stopped doing a full MotoGP season because, first of all, we've talked about this. I've done many jobs and it's always been a different job almost every couple of years. So it's kept everything interesting. It's made me rediscover the sport from different points of view. And it would have to be something really exciting that I would want to share, that would have to bring me back.
It's given you a lot and you've given it a lot, but do you miss the paddock?
I miss the people. I miss that adrenaline rush that being there provides, because doing live feed is something very special. As you know, it's not comparable. I mean, the vlog was amazing. This is the thing, right? Live feed, it's ABC. You cannot, go away from that. But when you record, you have more flexibility. You can be more creative. So, I miss being able to produce my own thing. That's something that I really, really miss. And if something came up that allowed me to do that, maybe I could come back. But as of right now, I don't think there's a place for me for the time being. I do miss MotoGP, but I don't miss the travel. I don't miss the commutes.
I thought you might say that.
Yeah.
It is energy sapping, actually, isn't it? One more thing, and I wasn't going to get too much into the women in motorsport thing, because I'm sure you get asked about this all the time. Because it should be equal for everyone, let's be honest. However, if there are any young women listening to this who are trying to get in, and it is a male-oriented environment, it still is, isn't it? Yeah. Let's be honest. Yeah. Much less so than it used to be, but it is.
It's gotten way better.
Yeah, I think it has.
But we're not there yet.
Okay, so let's just finish with this. How are we not there yet? What can we do better? And what advice would you give to any young girls trying to get into the sport? Is it more difficult for a girl, do you think, to do a media job in motorsport?
My first comment would be, make sure you're getting into it for the right reasons. Don't get sucked in by the glamour. You need to be really passionate about the sport, not about being around athletes, not about working with the stars, not about the travel. You really need to get into it for the right reasons, because you're going to sacrifice a lot of family time. You're going to sacrifice a lot of your personal life, because it's really hard to have relationships when you're most of the year away and traveling. And when you get home, while your significant other might be working during the week, that's when you're resting. And when your friends want to see you, that's when you're working, because it's the weekends. So make sure that you know that there's going to be a lot of sacrifice involved. But if you are passionate, you'll make it. But make sure you speak several languages, because that's going to also be really helpful.
That's easier said than done, isn't it, for some people?
Yes. But I have to say, I did not study journalism, but I was able to work as a pit lane reporter and later on as a presenter because of my language skills.
Did you ever feel you were at a loss in any situation because you hadn't officially studied media or journalism?
Well, at the beginning, it made me feel insecure.
Did it really?
It did, because I was like, what accreditates me to fill this position? And it's the imposter syndrome that is within all of us. But after a couple of races, once I started getting positive feedback from people saying, oh my gosh, he can speak to Dovi in Italian on the grid, and he's more forthcoming because he's not having to think about, translating what his thoughts. So it's more natural, and you see a more natural interaction. And so speaking to riders in Italian or in Spanish and then translating to French, the viewers saw an added value, and then I was like, okay, I can play to my strengths and provide that and bring the sport closer in that way to the viewer, and that's what I really loved.
You mentioned Dovi there. Let's just have one more listen. It actually sounds like he's being shot there.
On the edit, obviously, we replayed, the slow-mo, but it was his face. If you haven't seen it, just go on YouTube and watch it. It's hilarious.
Just before was good as well, because your sort of ponytail or hair at the back just blew up, didn't it? Because of the pressure from the suit.
It takes your breath away for a second or two when it deploys.
Yeah, it must be weird.
Yeah.
Knowing it's coming, it must be worse. As Dovi said, it must be worse when you're expecting it, because when you're actually crashing, I'm sure you've got other things to be worrying about.
Because when it deploys, they're up in the air, because that's why it deploys.
Yeah, true.
So obviously, it's not the same.
Yeah, true. It's not. Yeah, that's true. You're not. And also, they're standing, aren't they, when you're doing a video like that? Anyway, thank you very much. It has been a pleasure. Anything else you'd like to throw in?
Well, thank you for having me, and we do have a go-kart challenge to look forward to.
Yes. Okay. Do you prefer indoor or outdoor, by the way?
Outdoor.
Oh, I prefer the indoor ones, because I think you can make more of a difference on the outdoor one. That's why.
Outdoors are trickier, because you need to get those tires really warm to work well.
Yeah. Oh, you should see the look in her eyes as she says that. Yeah, I don't know. I think we better end the podcast quickly. No, we'll do it. We'll do it. I love karting anyway.
Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for being with us. We'll have to do another one. And by the way, please don't forget, I always forget this, we are now on Twitter and Instagram. Not that I'm a big fan of them, but it's Talking Away Pod on Twitter and Talking Away Podcast. We could fit the whole thing in there on Instagram. Vanessa, you're of course still on the socials, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
What's your name on there now?
It's Vanessa with a double S and Carlotta with a double T.
Can I throw in one last question?
Sure.
Where's the Carlotta come from? What's your real name? Because I think people will... Are you Vanessa
How much time do you have?
Are you Vanessa Carlotta? Who the hell are you?
So my legal name is Vanessa Guerra, and I have no middle name.
And
but
your illegal name?
But my Italian family, because when I was working for Forward Racing, I was living with the Corti family. Claudio Corti, who was a MotoGP rider back in the day, he has an older brother who's my age, and I lived at their parents' house. And because it's Claudio with the C and Corrado with the C, and back in the day, Corrado had a girlfriend who's now his wife, Francesca, but before her, his ex-girlfriend was called Vanessa. So basically, the mom called Francesca Vanessa, not because of the ex, but because I was around. So Corrado told me on a ski lift, because we went skiing that weekend, he's like, we have an issue, we have a problem. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, we need to change your name. I'm like, what do you mean? And he explained the situation. I was like, oh, okay, I don't mind. And he's like, Christina? I was like, not happening. Chiara? I was like, no. He's like, it has to be with a C, because you're like our third sibling, so it has to be a C. Claudio, Corrado, and a C for you. So it ended up being Carlotta. I agreed to Carlotta.
And for any Christinas or Claudias who may be listening to this, do you have a message for them? It's just not your kind of name, obviously.
It's nothing against those names. Yeah. I don't think it fits me for some reason, but I'm sure it fits you.
Who, me?
No, them.
Oh, them, yeah, okay.
All the Christinas and Chiaras out in the world.
Anyway, there we go. I meant to ask you that at the very beginning and I forgot. Okay, well, we have been talking away here in Madrid, and thank you again for inviting us into your home with Vanessa Carlotta.
My pleasure.
Vanessa Guerra, and we'll be back very soon. Let us know if you have any questions for Vanessa's next episode, and wish me good luck with the karting.